So like a really common one is heat transfers.
Yeah.
So especially when you got like purlins or something connecting into a primary a beam sort of in the roof or something like that. So in that instance, installing board to all of those little purlin structures and all the rest of it's going to be incredibly time consuming.
Welcome to Fireproof, the Passive Fire podcast, where we delve into the world of passive fire protection. Join the ProFinish team as we dig into the issues we see on site and in our industry every day, and find out how you can save time, money, and headaches on major construction projects.
All right, guys, welcome back to the podcast. I've got James and Kane here with me today. Guys, we're going to jump straight into it. What is the best thing about using board on site?
I would say the best thing about using board is that you can fix pretty much anything to it and you still have that fire rating.
Nice, like directly through it?
You can fix anything directly through it to the steel and you'll still achieve that fire rating.
And so like run us through a situation where that would be beneficial.
It's windows, external facades, wall framing. Pretty much we get a lot of calls from builders saying that they need to rip down external walls or window frames that because they haven't thought about the fire rating of the beams. So we always come in and pretty much provide them with a solution. So
yeah. So on a drawing, maybe like James, what do you sort of see? Like, what would that look like to you?
With issues, you'll see sort of side details with lots of things being fixed to the structural beam or column that needs to be fire rated. So straight away you go, well, something's fixing into that. So we need to put a board there pretty much, or something that can be fixed through. So
so normally you'd have like your C-track or something where your walls are connecting directly to the structural column, and the structural column needs to be fire rated. And so you're saying that with the board, one of the best things about it is you can build around it and then they can fix to it after.
Spot on.
Yeah. Yep. One of the main things I miss. Cool. So a couple other things with board then. What are some other benefits to using board?
Yep. I think it's just a very clean, easy product to install basically. So trade-wise, for example, it's not too difficult. So we've got quite a few plasterers and chippies who work through it and they can learn it pretty quickly with the background they have. Once they learn all the tests behind it and how it actually needs to be installed, it's very quick and simple on site. Yep. And with that as well, it can be done off-site, which is a big positive, I think. So modular, massive thing that we've been doing lately. And
something we spoke about in the last one.
Yeah,
absolutely.
I get a lot of calls from builders pretty much that they've already had maybe like a vermiculite spray done, and they pretty much just don't like the look of it. The clients walk through, I'd probably rather like a clean finish.
Yeah, okay.
So a lot of builders and clients actually, they love the look of it. You can paint over it. If you seal it up, it actually gives you like a nice looking finished steel beam that's fire rated. So
it can be stopped up. So it looks like normal plaster at the end of the day, which can work anywhere.
Yeah, so like your main three are normally, well, obviously it's intumescent, which is your paint, vermiculite, which is your spray on, and then board. They're kind of the main ones. Where does sort of board sit price wise, and like why would you choose to use board over any of those other ones?
Yep, it's sort of your mid-range. Vermiculite's always your cheapest option. Typically behind sort of house you can't see it. Intumescent's your higher level, so it's more your aesthetic sort of high-end sort of finish areas where it's going to be visual to everyone, which is basically a paint finish, so it can look any colour or look as good as it needs to.
And it's often like circular hollow sections is one of the most common ones for intumescent, right? Because normally they're going to be an architectural feature somewhere in the building.
Yep, correct. Spot on. Whereas board, it's basically versatile. It can be used anywhere in regards to the finish. It could be used behind scenes where it's not going to be seen, and things can be fixed to it. So it's
like we spoke about,
yeah.
So let's jump into then. What are some of the limitations with board? Like, what are some of the things that you've seen where we've had to change to a different system, or we've had to do something differently?
Well, probably just the main one is that it's rigid.
Okay.
So if you have bolted connections, braces, window braces, wall braces, pretty much anything that's thin or bolted or like round, you kind of want to move more towards a vermiculite or like an intumescent kind of system. We normally just play it safe, is that if you can't box around it or if you can't install it as a rigid frame, then you might want to move towards a different product.
Different system, yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's where the costs start to come into board, right? So like a really common one is heat transfers.
Yeah.
So especially when you got like purlins or something connecting into a primary a beam sort of in the roof or something like that. So in that instance, installing board to all of those little purlin structures and all the rest of it's going to be incredibly time consuming.
Yeah, exactly.
Whereas if you swap to a vermiculite spray, it's going to be, probably maybe even a tenth of the cost. Like it's very, very cheap compared to the board, just because of the labour. Yeah, it's probably the slowest part. So understanding, I suppose, the details of the drawings, understanding the connection details, understanding if there's heat transfers and whatnot. That's kind of how you'll normally pick your solution that you would use.
Yep, correct.
Cool. So what about some recent projects that you guys have worked on that maybe sort of stick out to you?
Yeah, well, maybe touching on what James said. Lennon Mills, we've just pretty much wrapped up today, where we've completed all the fire rating of the beams and columns in a ProMat board, and they want it pretty much. They're just handing it over to the client as a finished product. So,
Kind of like a cold shell, or like is it fitted out, or is it just?
Yeah, so it's pretty much half fitted out, but it's the warehouse is that they're just planning on painting the pro-matted beams and columns. So we've gone in and we've stopped up all the fixing of the beams of the columns where we've previously fixed the pro-mat to the steel, so that we get that nice finish on those columns and beams. So pretty much it just looks like any other beam or column that's been plastered over, or like a wall that's been plastered over. You can't tell the difference.
Yeah.
So after it's been painted, it just looks. You wouldn't even be able to tell that it's a fire rated board or ProMat board.
Yep. One for me that probably stands out would be Icon Park. So we did stage 1, 2, 3 there, which was structural steel and lightweight flooring. So something we haven't touched on is system flooring, which is 2 layers of flooring on top. It's usually a cement sheet and system panel, and then 2 layers of fire rated board on the underside to create a fire compartment between 2 areas.
Just on that, why do you think that system is something that's beneficial?
I think it's cost a lot, to be honest. Slabs, so much labour going to send out slabs with all the formwork, the reo, the labour, and just cost of the material. So doing this, you just got your typical floor joists, whether they be steel or timber.
Yep.
And it's just so much quicker on site and can be done modular. Again, another benefit of it. So
Absolutely.
yeah, but good project, very consistent basically. I think it's about a year's worth of work on and off for us.
They just went obviously one to the next. Anyone that follows football have seen Icon Park's development. It's a lot. It's actually annoying because they reduced the seating. And anyway, it's something that
half the grounds.
That's right. Half the ground's a training facility. One of the questions that often pops up, I think, from our clients is they'll say, why do we, or it comes up in drawings, is that why do we use plasterboard, or why do we use ProMat as opposed to using FireCheck? Mm-hmm. What are some of the reasons that you think we choose to use ProMat board?
Yep. For me, typically it's usually labour and space. So with your typical gypsum sort of plaster, you could use your framing for it. So straight away you're losing space there within your walls. And it's a multi-layer system as well, typically 2 or 3 layers of fire-rated plaster, which once you put all the labour into that, you're blowing out cost so quickly. Whereas with your typical fire-rated boards, like your ProMats or Trafalgars, they're usually 1 or 2 layers maximum and maybe 15 to 30, 35 mil max. So that's like 2 hour fire rate in there. So it's, definitely a benefit to the client pushing that way.
Yeah, I would totally agree. It's pretty much the speed of the install. It's if not double the speed or even more.
Yeah,
and it's just
and just to be clear too, like for people listening, we're talking. One of the biggest reasons it pops up is that a sheet of plasterboard of fire-rated plasterboard's anywhere for like $7 to $15 a sheet, right? Very cheap. But normally you have to use multiple layers, so it's normally like, let's say $20 for 3 layers, $20 per sheet. Your ProMat, you're going to pay $100 to $150 per sheet. But when you add in the labour component to install the FireCheck or the similar products to that, it's cost. It's basically it works out to be similar from all of the things that we've sort of gone through. The only thing is that again you're losing space.
Yep.
And so we always prefer to install ProMat as opposed to FireCheck or any of those other products. It's not always the case, I suppose, but it is definitely the preference, especially for structural steel and those kind of things. Is there any situations where you might swap back to like a FireCheck? or a fire rated plasterboard?
60 minutes,
Yeah.
I think sometimes we'll go
Yeah.
plaster for the walls especially.
Yeah.
Being one layer, maybe 2 layers if required. So it can be, cost-wise it can work out a lot better. But it's not something to push too hard, but definitely there is circumstances where it's needed, or if it's spec'd on the job and just easy to push it that way, then you can go with it.
Yeah, we use a little bit of a fire check for maybe bulkheads.
Yeah.
Just depending on what kind of fire rating you're after. So.
Yeah, I think that's a good point to touch on too, is that one of the things you need to consider when installing board is what's going to be coming through it. And so like there are limitations. Often it's very common for like your, let's say fire check, because it's very common, or CNAF, those products, they're very well known in the market. So a lot of plasterers and et cetera will use it in the market. And so what it means is that a lot of the penetrations that are coming through those walls, a lot of the companies will actually test their products on those walls.
Yep.
Whereas if you're using a specific board product from a specific company, like a ProMat or like a Firefly or like these other companies, a lot of the time you won't have their competitors testing their products on their walls. And so you can be limited in what you can use, I suppose, in moving forward. And so it's really important to consider what is actually coming through those walls.
Yep.
Is there any situations you've seen people get caught up, or you've had examples of where this has happened? I've stumped
Good
him.
question. Yeah, I've stumped me. But like we've built walls before where we've done P100 walls, for example, and then we've only done the walls, not been included in the service penetrations. You come back, I don't know, 3 months later, start doing some other work. You're like, that shouldn't be going through there.
Yeah, that's
not
right.
tested there.
Yeah,
So,
exactly.
It does happen, but yeah, obviously when we design the whole thing, we make sure it's compliant. And
Yeah, just something to be aware of, right? You just need to make sure that when you're considering a wall system, you're considering what's going through it. And that's probably the key thing.
Yeah, and it's always like a bit of a word to the builder is like, hey mate, you might want to get a penetration audit. Just some of the things I've seen you might not get over the line, and we do offer that service. So
Yeah, cool. All right. So I think we've spoken about why you would use things. Is there any other limitations as to why you wouldn't use board?
External, probably. It's not really an external product. There's ways to work around that. So you can render over some of the boards, you can flash over them, or just put like a cladding over them.
Yep.
But if it's going to be exposed to the weather for a long certain amount of time, basically, it's recommended not to use it all because it's an internal product. So that's probably one limitation with it, I think.
Yep, and probably one of the ones that just stands out to me is that some of the boards, they're very heavy. The weight, and if you have a building where you don't have clear access up a number of stories through maybe an elevator and it's just a stairway, it can be very, very labour intensive to get boards up multiple levels, especially flooring boards. As they're fibre cement,
Super heavy.
compressed fibre cement.
Yep.
It kills the guys. So.
Yeah, so programming's just super important to consider too. Yeah, it's not something you can just bring in and whack down. It's not like plasterboard sort of thing. Like if you're using a flooring system where you swap from a slab to a flooring, you need to make sure that you've considered getting things up.
And that's when the logistics come in. So if you have a crane on site when you might be doing the steel erection, is that if you can get the board lifted up by crane to specific points of the building at that opportunity, then it helps the guys out so much.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, cool. So that's pretty much all we need to talk about today, guys. Is there anything else you wanted to finish on, just with board, or any other recommendations maybe when moving ahead, or anything like that?
Not really. It's something we push massively, just in general, for every column, basically, if it's going to be in a building. Not like intrumescent, obviously, is different, but we rarely want to use vermiculite on columns. So just with board, if you've got columns in your building that be fire rated, we recommend board.
Yeah. Why is that? Why would you switch from a vermiculite to a board in that instance?
Well, as we were talking about earlier, with your partition walls, most of them are going to be bracing the columns or boxing them around them, and pretty much all the time you're going to have studs or tracks fixed into that. And straight away you get the plasterers on site, they'll get out their little tools and start scraping it off just like that constantly. And then instantly void. So
I've been through multiple over 10 projects now where we might have boarded the columns and then the beams have been sprayed, and then obviously the plasterers or the framers need to fix their walls into the underside of the beams, and then they go through it, just scrape off the vermiculite. So it's just They just get us to come through, and we do an interface where we bore the underside of the beams. So we spray the sides, and we bore the underside so they can fix their walls into the underside face.
Yeah, nice. It is something that's become super common on site. I think something we sort of worked on early days years ago, but something that now is definitely, I've been seeing it on a lot of different projects with other installers and stuff like that. So it's good to see that the market are adopting it, because it is kind of like a hybrid, and it definitely is cost saving. So it's good to see that getting improved. All right, guys. Well, thanks for today. Really appreciate you guys coming on, and I hope that our listeners got some benefit from this. If you guys ever need anything, feel free to reach out.
No worries. Thanks, guys.
Thanks.
Thank you.